On average, we have anywhere from 6 all the way on up to 15 stakeholders involved in the sales cycle. The biggest challenge that we had is understanding who was receiving what information and who needed the information and who all was actually looking at the resources we were providing. And we saw a gap in teaching our champion and how to sell and providing them the business cases, but we oftentimes lacked context on who that audience always was. And we found in about 85 to 90% of the cases, the stakeholders that were presented to us only accounted for, on average, 60 to 70% of the actual stakeholders involved in the loop. And oftentimes the most important and influential individuals weren't a part of that loop early enough. And so it solved a couple of challenges. One, we understood who was entering the deal cycle with analytics that Rooms provided. The second is we're ensuring the material and the challenges that they needed to know were available immediately the first time that they saw it. And then the third is to know when those stakeholders are actually entering the cycle. Often we learned post-aligned that they were involved much sooner. It was actually within oftentimes a month ahead of the times that we were actually introducing to them. So we knew the amount of activity and context that they had ahead of time, and we can actually use that for marketing campaigns. Other drips that we're using that provide additional, we refer to them as buyer signals, not necessarily intent, but it tells us we actually have certain triggers that we apply to that. So it really solved at its core a visibility challenge in the sales cycle to us. And then secondarily, making sure we weren't repeating information over and over and over again throughout the process. We use it in two contexts. One is for sales, and it solves the gap of who is part of this process and who is looking at what, and what content we're providing matters most to each audience. I think it's, from a sales perspective, it gives us that visibility. So we know what matters most to each persona, gives us visibility to those personas. And then third, gives us insights much earlier into the deal cycle. The second thing that we use it for is from the handoff from sales to customer success. One of the biggest challenges of customer success teams everywhere, and one that even we experienced, is when you have a really long 7, 8, 9-month sales cycle with multiple stakeholders, and the deal gets handed off then to a CSM, an implementation specialist, to then go and onboard a customer. And the first thing they say, well, what are your main priorities? And you have the customers that want to go jump off a cliff because they spent so much time building this with an AE and maybe a sales engineer, only to have to repeat themselves going directly to a CSM. So this allows us now, from a customer success standpoint, to take the entire picture of what we've worked with the customer, and it's truly seamless. The CSM steps in context and is able to kind of take things from an enterprise level that are unique to that customer, rather than just taking the one-size-fits-all approach. And we really uniquely customize and tailor that experience to those customers based off of the business case we built in sales. So it's really enabled a seamless kind of transition and allows us to execute on a contextual customer journey, rather than calling it the sales journey, the CSM journey, the marketing journey, whatever you want to silo it off into. It's now just the customer journey that's managed in one process. This has been super helpful to see everything that I care about in one digestible view. It wasn't multiple documents spread all the way across. It wasn't digging through emails. It wasn't forwarding things. It was just the stuff that we discussed that was digestible to the person on the other side. The second thing, and this is a more recent example, we had a champion turnover, and that's usually kind of the beginning of the end with large enterprise deals. It's a nightmare for any AE owning this, because you feel like you have to go through and re-educate the champion on what it is, bring them up to speed, kind of go back in time. The feedback we got from a new champion is within about a week from meeting them, to then the follow-up call, they were fully caught up on what it is that we were working on with them, and actually enabled them to speed up their onboarding process into their own unique role. So it kind of serves two purposes: to know, I know what problem is going to be most impactful for my organization, but I know how to pick up from where we left off and why both of those matter. And it was actually a really powerful kind of feedback loop to see we're enabling the buyers to buy not just from the beginning all the way on through that 7-8 month cycle, but for someone brand new, they can catch up and be up to speed within a week, over several months of a deal cycle, and take it on forward without losing momentum. Aligned helps our buyers most by giving them, firstly, there are really three things: visibility into all of the things that they need to know, because they have a million things that happen in their 40 hours a week. And they generally will spend 1 to 3 minutes at a time to go in and poke in and catch back up. So I think it brings everything back to the surface, and it's quick for them to digest and kind of recatch up on what matters. But the second thing is it provides them visibility into where we're going. Oftentimes a question for buyers in the enterprise cycle is, I don't know where we're at. It feels like that we're just in this long loop and we don't really have a very clear plan, or there's some kind of mutual action plan in an email or something like that. It really ties everything together for our buyers to know exactly where we are in the process. There's commitment on both sides, and we're working towards kind of you and us against the problem, versus I'm trying to sell to you. I think it brings collaboration, and kind of a shoulder to shoulder type of feel for our buyers. So the things that they saw were, first, starting with the core business problem, and essentially an executive summary to in a digestible way that was detailed enough to be able to understand this at a very educated level, what exactly was happening, but also digestible enough that it could be quickly consumed within a matter of minutes. And then you have the follow-on information and the months of collateral that we put together, along with other stakeholders in the other organization, that kind of painted the story of what's happening. So it felt like, instead of having to consume a whole book, it felt like you were getting a little snippet of what you needed to know first, and you got a little bit more. We kind of answered the follow-on questions with just how the room was set up, and it was just by nature of how we went through kind of building the deal and business case together. So it enabled the champion then to kind of come in and learn, kind of have contextual learning or in the moment information as needed, and could go deep as needed, or stay as high as needed at the surface level. The measurable impacts, one is in champion turnover. Deals that are expected to go twice as long stay, instead of 200% of the expected deal cycle, stay at 100%. The second is the level of engagement and measurable engagement that we can verify from different stakeholders in the process. That one's a little bit more intangible, but the third is key data that I look at as a leader is how many stakeholders are actually involved in the process, and how many does it take in order to drive something forward. And then the fourth is then what content are we creating from a sales and marketing perspective that unique stakeholders actually are looking at and caring about and engaging with. That fourth one, I think, is one, if anything else, one of the most powerful hidden insights that we would have never been able to get to on our own. Primarily because we can create all the collateral in the world, and oftentimes in the sales cycle, we have assumptions, predefined assumptions on who actually cares about the content. We were learning the content that we thought matched one persona. It was actually an entirely different persona that engages with that content. And so that has been one of the biggest measurable impacts, is knowing content that resonates and what percent of personas engage with that content. And then even further, how much does that push the deal forward? And so I'd say those four, I have to kind of silo each of those separately, have been important. But to summarize, one, sales cycles move faster. Two, champion turnover doesn't kill deals. Third, we have insights into who's in the room and what content matters to each persona. So on average, our typical enterprise sales cycle, it previous to going into Align was about 10 months. Post Aligned, our average enterprise sales cycle is about seven months. And so it's a 30% uplift. And we can attribute that to two main drivers. One is very clear plans between us and the champion. And the second is then understanding the personas that enter the room, and we can engage them with the content that we know matters most to them. So in both contexts, those have really driven our deal cycles to move faster. And 30% is a big lift in the enterprise segment. It really matters, and it's the difference between getting revenue in the same fiscal year or having that pushed off into a later year. The time saved is roughly neutral, but the consistency of process is the biggest thing. So if we measure that pure activity of what a rep doing, it often looks on the surface as net neutral, but the consistency and the lagging metrics of those by following a consistent sales process has led to better close rates. So we've been able to drive that much cleaner, and by laying that out for our reps. That's where we've seen the bigger impact has been the consistency of things that drive results rather than just activity and time saved, and looking at it from a vanity standpoint. Where we find reps kind of when their close rates go down, it's usually because they kind of start veering off the path and they're winging it or going off of memory. And it's I don't know, have you ever read the Checklist Manifesto? It's the context of like pilots, right? Pilots never take off without going through the manual checklist because you're just prone to forget things or skip steps. Same thing in the healthcare world. You had hospitals with really high infection rates, and they're like, well, why is that? It happened as a result of operations happening. And while they found, once they implemented checklists, pre-surgery checklists, those infection rates went down, the adverse things went down. And we see the same thing in the sales cycle and in the go-to-market. When we stick to the checklist, our surface area for success is much larger. You can't, I guess in a little quote in Austin, you can never say you guarantee better results with sales, because oftentimes it's got to be the right persona, timing is a factor, all those things. But with that consistency, you can identify those things much quicker. You can disqualify faster. You can qualify in quicker. But it's on one hand, you could say it's not a pure math game, but the law of large numbers says yes. It kind of default, if you're consistent, the number and math kind of follow the consistency of process. The reps love it for two primary reasons. One, all the stuff that is provided to a customer is all contextual and feels tailored to the customer. Customers can sense when you're receiving the generic version of something, and they know it. So this allows the reps to really kind of add that next level touch of personalization, and provide that directly to the customer, and for them to take ownership. They take pride in that. The second is the experience from the buyers. I think they get that feedback loop that I really like this. This is great. I see everything in one spot. And so instead of just feeling like you're selling and you're pushing something, and nobody likes to feel like they're the salesman that's just going and pushing something. It's much more fun to sell with your buyer. And that's enabled that for them. I think getting the feedback loop of engagement and somebody else enjoying having that same space to kind of collaborate and work together it's taken a lot of the sterility out of the sale, and really feels more like selling with than selling to. and something that I know my reps have felt a pretty big difference in, and being able to engage with their buyers and take pride in what they're building and providing from a business standpoint and creating value. For making the decision to go with Aligned, it came down to really three things. First, does this solve a much bigger problem than just sales? Because one of the things that I wanted to make sure personally is that this doesn't feel like we're creating another silo in go to market, but that this actually enables our customers, if we put ourselves in their shoes, to feel the entire journey that we're building for them. You know, the personal touch, customization, that focus isn't just a sales skill, it's also a marketing skill, it's also a customer success skill, it's also a support skill. We wanted to make sure we paint that picture. The second is reusability of the information. And when I say reusability, for somebody, a CSM coming in, you think of the awful experiences of CSMs coming in and taking over account. You think of the awful experiences of a new AE coming in and taking over a deal that's halfway through, or the awful experience of a buyer that gets kind of thrown in, and you have these so many shared bad experiences that it's something that allows anybody new coming in to kind of catch up and pick up right where they left off. And the third thing is that it has connectivity to the tools that we use. We're in a world now where everyone is trying to slim down our tech stack. One of the things that matters, you know, to me and to our team is that we don't have 25 or 27, 35 different platforms to run our go-to-market motion. We want to consolidate as much as possible and take things as far as they can go. And so that interoperability between our CRMs, between our scheduling platforms, our emails, all that stuff matters. So those three things were the biggest drivers that enabled that decision for us, and to really move forward and feel good with what we were doing. There are a plethora of options. There are a couple of things that mattered most and stood out. One, many of my colleagues or former colleagues, others in my network are aligned champions, and so there's a lot of conversations that we have in the go-to-market community on what tools can we look at that enable us to kind of grow together. And so that was one thing that stood out with Aligned. And the second was really rich analytics and flexibility and being a part of where the platform is going. You know, there oftentimes it can be difficult as a buyer to feel like, okay, you get what you get. You can buy a Ferrari, you can buy whatever, but you're stuck with that. And it's difficult to implement. It's difficult to use in the early days. And over time, we kind of outgrow certain functions, and you have to figure out another way to bring that in. So with Aligned, there's collaboration between our teams kind of together. And even in the sales cycle, figuring out here are exactly the things that I'm looking for, and then what are the things that are coming down kind of in the future, and working through that with the sales, with the AE that I was working with. Those were important. So among all the options we could have gone to, we could have kind of taken what we knew, or we could have taken made the choice with what was best for now, but also for the future as we grow and scale together. So that's why we chose Aligned among many of the options we had. Capabilities that we like most. First, I think is the embedded nature of the deal rooms and the insights that are derived off of that. So no longer is it just kind of this templated area. So when I say embedded, it doesn't feel like you're sticking a bunch of stuff that people just export and drag and drop out of. It's truly embedded into the room, so you can know what people are engaging with. And the second is the analytics of who is entering the room and what they're engaging with. Those two things are the kind of hidden gems of what Aligned does for us, among the kind of obvious, you know, co-selling and selling together and collaborating together. It's the insights and the visibility that we have that we never would have had before. There are two core areas. First is in the sales process, to have consistency in the sales process. The second was having consistency in the customer success process, and that both are accomplished together. That has been really, really important. And we're in an age now where customer success is critical to growth and sustainability. You can sell really well, you can get addicted to new logo growth, but if you can't execute and deliver and create that experience, it's a real kind of company killer. And so being able to execute very sophisticated customer playbooks while still engaging the customer in the same way and enabling tools and shareability between us and the customer, it really eliminates the dog and pony show of doing QBRs that mean nothing. Or you get into monthly check-ins and those things that don't create value to the customer. We actually look at the value drivers to a customer, and we can work more and more asynchronously, but look at the things that matter and collaborate together without having to just jump on a call every single week or every month. And we're finding time to work together, even beyond the sales journey and in the customer journey. And engagement matters in this day and age. So finding ways to work with our customers without having to be on a Zoom call every minute of the day matters.